Hello, everyone. Welcome to wasmCloud Wednesday for Wednesday, April 23rd. Today, for the community meeting, we actually have only one item on our agenda, but no demo. It is community quarterly road mapping planning time, which should be a fun one. Thank you all for coming on the Zoom, and I'm going to try to keep an eye on the live stream as well. Hey, Ravel, sorry. Um, we can make sure that we get all the feedback addressed here. So we did put up a discussion about right after the last quarterly road mapping planning on GitHub, and I didn't see anything really worth mentioning there in terms of feedback and features that have come in. So I think a lot of the valuable things that we have to look forward to over the next couple of months are pretty well outlined in our issues that are already present, our issues and pull requests that are open. Really, before we, so we'll get into planning here in just a moment. I think I'd like to just take a little bit of a look back on the previous roadmap for the first couple minutes of the call to talk about how it went and what we planned and what we got done. So let me go ahead and share my screen. So looking back at the quarter one roadmap, was just a reminder if anybody's tuning in maybe for the first time or watching this, Wasm Cloud has been doing quarterly road mapping planning for the last, wow, more than a year now, looks like. That's pretty wild. And really the whole goal is for us to get together on the community call, do kind of a special edition and talk about what's important, what's coming up, and create a nice place for all the people who are working on this project to get their features in, highlight the good things we're starting on, and like big quarterly goals. So taking a look, it's too meta to do a retrospective on the retrospective, but taking a look at the goals for our previous road mapping plan, which was for the first quarter of this year. We really wanted to apply some rigor to some of our APIs, our capability provider SDKs, and our documentation. A very large effort in the Wasm community space is dedicated to WASI P3, which introduces a number of things into the server-side WebAssembly space. So we needed to be tracking that and contributing wherever possible, and then continue to bring forward some of our previous goals from Wasm Cloud, like we should be the best developer experience for building, testing, and deploying WebAssembly applications. And when we are taking in mind what we want to do as a project, we should be enabling developers to build features without vendor lock-in, platform-specific dependencies, or language constraints. All that good stuff. So the goals for specific roadmaps generally just flow from the issues and things that we tend to accept over that period. But some, the why we highlight the features that Wasm Cloud has and things like that after or for each road mapping session is so that we just kind of keep our eye on the ball about what the Wasm Cloud project is trying to be. So, taking a look back at the quarter one roadmap, this was actually, we did a couple of new things for this road mapping planning. After we were accepted as an incubating project in the CNCF, we essentially formalized this process. So, sorry, I've got a ton of tabs open, but if you're curious on how we actually do these sessions, we have a Wasm Cloud roadmap process in the GitHub. Look at us doing all of the organizational things. So if anybody's curious about how this works and how we lead these sessions, that is how. So really, just a quick look back through the issues and things that we committed to. I think we knew that this was a pretty ambitious roadmap with the amount of items that we took on, with the amount of ideal. We added a couple features during the road mapping planning call that weren't very fleshed out. And so I think you can see that reflected here in our end state, something like, external capability provider support, something we know that we want to work on, but we didn't really have an RFC for at the time. And so, that's a really difficult one to pick up as a contributor, as a maintainer. Overall, there's really not too much that we didn't get started on in this road mapping or in the quarter one roadmap. And I think that they're all important. Oh, hey, well, that one's looking good. When it comes to correcting inconsistencies or defining our cloud events in a language agnostic structure, I think these can move forward onto the Q2 roadmap as just kind of carryover things. I know that we still want to do them. Some of these are also just smaller issues that have stayed open for a little while, and I have some suggestions and thoughts about those. But really, these aren't anything too large we should be afraid of bringing over. You'll see that we have quite a couple of issues in the in progress column here. So Aditya has put in some awesome work on the cron job capability provider. That's actually sitting in a PR now. I can't remember if it's in draft or if it's ready, but I know we've given it an initial review. So this one shouldn't be too far from getting merged. Same thing with the Nats object store is not on this one. Same thing with OSS Fellows built-in HTTP client provider. There's actually a pull request open for that. Same with using clap autocomplete. So these are things that actually are moving forward just fine and either need a little bit more, either need reviews or to just kind of get pushed across the line. I have thoughts about that as well. And I'll mention it now. I think that, on GitHub roadmaps or on GitHub projects, we can tag issues and pull requests as being part of our roadmap. And I think going forward, what I'll do is instead of or sorry, what I would suggest, and then anybody's welcome to offer feedback, is for these remaining issues, the cron job provider, the built-in HTTP client, clap autocomplete, I think we can actually bring these forward in terms of their open pull requests. So we can tag the pull request on the roadmap, and then that's the thing that we need to be reviewing and taking a look at. And then once it merges, then that item is complete anyways. So I'm open to anybody's thoughts there. Previously, we just didn't put pull requests on the roadmap really, but I think it makes sense for things where they are like when the pull request has been open for a minute, and that is the remaining piece of work. So open to any feedback there, but really just the goal is transparency and showing where we're putting the effort. As far as WASI P3 definitely in progress, and a huge thanks to all of the folks on the wasmCloud side who have been dedicating their time, or at least part of their time, to WASI P3. At least as far as I know that Bailey, as TSC director, is putting in a ton of time to drive this across the line. Roman, who has been, contributing to WASI for a long time, but implementing WASI P3 inside of Wasm time, along with other folks in the Bytecode Alliance. And Victor Adossi has been working both on the JavaScript tooling and on the Node runtime piece for WASI P3. So I think, have been doing a pretty fantastic job of putting resources towards it, and really this serves as a nice marker on the roadmap, but there isn't really any actionable. We don't have to be. It's not pushing it across here. It's just tracking for wasmCloud. I've made good strides in bundling wasmCloud and Wash, so I'm hoping to wrap that up pretty soon with some of the things that I've shown in the community call. So we did pretty well. We tackled some big refactors. Thank you, Ahmed, for coming in and taking time out of your schedule to consolidate Wash CLI and Wash lib. This has been awesome. It's so nice to just contribute something to Wash and then immediately get it out and not worry about, does this need to go in the library or the CLI or whatever, which has been great. And I guess we don't need to comment on all of these, but we've made really good strides in the past roadmap. So when I look at this and I think about what we've done, it's also important to take a look at so the wasmCloud dev stats is something the CNCF provides to us. It just gives us all kind of statistics on what we've been doing. So if you look at the last quarter, you can see the kind of dotted lines vertically are when we've done releases. So we've been keeping a nice, looks like about monthly cadence for Wasm Cloud releases. Amazing. Our contributors are, naturally maybe took a dip in the sad times of the year and are coming back up. If you look, you take that average and take everything into account. We have an average of 30 contributors on a month-to-month basis for Wasm Cloud, and we made over 3,500 contributions to Wasm Cloud just in the past quarter. So that's like commits, pull requests, issues opened. That's huge. We are definitely crushing it in terms of how much we are doing. We're approaching 2,000 stars on GitHub, all the fun things. So when you take a step back and look at our roadmap, like we completed, let's just look at completed, right? We completed 9 items on the roadmap, right? But if we had 3,500 contributions, hundreds of pull requests closed, then, we're definitely spending our time on Wasm Cloud, not necessarily a majority of the time on what we came up with during the road mapping session. I think that that seems pretty reasonable. Lots of things come up after the road mapping session. I mean, imagine any bug that gets filed for the next 2 months would not have been present here, but we'll still complete it, things like that. So looking forward, I want to make sure that we capture like open pull requests on the roadmap so that we can like close those out and pad our stats, wink, wink. And I want to make sure that the majority of the things that make it onto the roadmap come from open issues that have been triaged by maintainers, put in the right place, and we're capturing that and committing to it more so than the some of the larger, more open-ended issues that we've committed to on previous roadmaps. I'll take uh I'll take an example, revisiting the provider SDK's provider testing ability. This is fairly vague. It doesn't really give too much instruction about where to go. It's really just like a maintainer, a longtime maintainer needs to go and triage this. Because of this, I have a couple of suggestions for the next roadmap, and anyone is welcome to let me know what you think. But I've set up the Q2 2025 view on the Wasm Cloud project, which I can go ahead and share wherever the Zoom chat went. There you go. I'll go ahead and share here. And I've changed the categories. I put them in a separate GitHub category, so it's not going to mess with anything from before. But I've set them up to be research, development, and good first issue. Because items in the research category should be things like WASI P3. These are big, long-standing issues that, WebAssembly experts are going to be working on, and they are they're more open-ended. They may result in RFCs, things like Taylor's exploration into pluginifying Wash. I think there's a lot of interesting stuff there, and it requires a lot of knowledge of the ecosystem. Development are another level of concrete beyond that, well-defined features, enhancements, things that have a more clear scope and what need to come out of it. And what I'm thinking here is anyone who is familiar with the Wasm Cloud ecosystem, anyone who's familiar with like the tools that we use, should be able to take this. So I'll give an example. One of them is, well, that one's in triage, but I think it's actually fine. One of them is Blobstore S3 environment variables. This is something about when we run the provider, we actually scrub environment variables from that provider's environment. So we need to change it to use config and secrets instead. This is something that anybody who is familiar with like the provider model and what we're doing could take and complete, and it's not too bad. So really intended for any maintainer, anyone who's contributed before. And then the final category, which this is another huge goal of mine for just the roadmap planning in general, is to provide a clear entry point for anybody who comes to Wasm Cloud and is like, this is cool, what should I work on? Or like, how can I contribute? And like, what's important? All of those items should go here. I think that if anything comes out of this roadmap planning and the categories and what we do, I would love to have a place where people can come in if you have any Rust knowledge at all, or are willing to ask an AI about it or what have you. This is a perfect place to get started. So before we talk about some of the issues that I've brought on here, do folks have comments, questions, concerns about like the category change? Just a reminder, we're kind of going from like categorizing the issue by documentation, new feature, and improvement, which I think is helpful, but doesn't give you a clear idea of like what should I take, to research, which are longer standing things that have a maintainer like sponsor who's taking it, development things that maintainers and contributors can take, and then good first issue. Sorry, I talked a lot, but the question was, does anybody have any thoughts, comments, concerns about that one? Yeah, Lucas.
Yeah, and this is kind of related to the task that you showed that was in the good first issue. It was like something is not working, needs to be better, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Uh, and it's more to say that I think items that go into the roadmap, they should be specific. Like we know what needs to be done, therefore it's going into the roadmap. If something is a bit ambiguous, it goes into research, because research is not only for looking into new things, but also for investigating why a specific bug is happening. So, and it's mainly to ask here if that specific task should actually be moved to research, because it seems like it was valid, but also not in the right category.
Yeah, is this the one you were talking about too, or did
No,
I
let me
just?
see if I find it. Yeah, sorry, it's pretty much not in this list at all.
Oh, okay. Well, maybe it should be. Just a note, I've populated this list with a lot of our open issues, but as you can see by my browser, I haven't made it all the way through it.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, I'm pretty much talking about the one that was in Q1 2025 is the revisit Wasm Cloud Provider SDK testing ability.
hmm,
And I under and I think that the point here is this is an improvement, yes, but it's also not specific. It's not telling us what needs to change there. It's more on the we know that there are deficiencies and somebody needs to come up with a list that will then have the right priorities.
yeah, 100%. I think uh, I'm happy that you are at this conclusion because this is exactly what I wanted from the research category. This is something that anyone could take a look into the provider SDK, but to really like dictate the vision of where it's going, it would be best to be someone who's written a couple capability providers, somebody who's worked on the SDK, and like you said, it doesn't have a clear end goal or scope for completion. So it would go in research and then likely result in either a couple issues or maybe even just like a pull request that says, here's my proposal for how it should be fixed. Yeah. I think that's exactly right. Lucas, were you suggesting that we should bring this onto the current roadmap, or like bring this forward onto the quarter 2 roadmap, under the research category because it's still relevant?
I think this is okay. It's more about the concept, the concept of a plan kind of thing. Uh, I also think like if we start looking at the issues that we have right now, there's an opportunity, and you touched on this exactly point right now. Sometimes we have issues that require a specific knowledge. So we need somebody that has worked a lot with the WASI HTTP bindings. And in that work, it's either there's a bug and everything is burning, we need to go and fix that right away, or is one of those bugs that happens once in a blue moon and not affecting a lot of people. So it flies under the radar for a lot of people, but also is impacting service for a few, and the impact is severe for them. So I think a few things get to a point that is we start to have death by a thousand cuts. And I think HTTP might be a good example here, that we start seeing so many little issues in HTTP that it warrants bundling that work together and creating some focus, some mini task force around HTTP as a theme, because that way we have enough work that somebody that is going to have to do refactors and so on. We have enough work that they can consider all those issues when doing the refactor, but also they can pair with someone in that effort and ramp up someone else in the process, and have someone else also understand that code base and be a bit more familiar with that section. So I think we should not, and wrapping up is to say, let's not look at bugs as as individual bugs, but more as categories. And this is categories, despite the uh, research roadmap, the categories from the roadmap is the area of the code. This is going to be inside wasmCloud host crate, inside tracing crate, and this way we can pair experts with people that are also willing to participate.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess kind of a bundle of great ideas there. I think you called out, if you look at the open bugs, there are a couple of similar bugs that come around the experience of HTTP, which, our HTTP implementation goes, touches many different things. So seems like there's just like a general theme that we need a little hardening around that experience. And then also that when you think of general hardening around the experience, that may be something that would be best accomplished by like a maintainer, somebody familiar with like where the HTTP inner workings are coming from. And it's a good opportunity to bring people in who are interested in contributing or who are already maintainers that we could like, I don't know, I'll pick on you, Mark, because you're here. Mark, say you're a TypeScript maintainer in wasmCloud and you noticed a TypeScript bug, but aren't really sure like where that's coming from in the wasmCloud host. Like, you know, you and I, or you and Roman, or you and Lucas, I don't know. I'm just picking random names. Could hop on a call and figure that out and fix it on both ends, and it just makes everybody kind of the better for it. Um, I mean, that sounds lovely. I like it. Um, so yeah, there's many different categories. We could go pretty aggressive with tagging these on like, you know, uh where do we put this before? That's nice. We could add more roadmap categories for like where it exists in the code base and what the area is. So I think if there's any opportunity for that, let's do it. I can't think of anything immediately. Um, so open to suggestion there. But Lucas, I think what you called out is we need on this current roadmap in the research category a broader issue around like HTTP. Um, I'm thinking
And
of all the buzz.
HTTP, and I think this is the perfect example for an item that should go into research. It's really not specific, so it's everything HTTP. look at the settings that we do for the HTTP provider and see if they are consistent. And why do we have default address with a dash and default address with a underscore somewhere else? So it's a full pass around HTTP.
Hmm. That's not what I want to do. Well, sure, why not? Mm, it's a lot of things. Not that. Hmm. And I'm just gonna free ball some of this, or free hand some of this. So please feel free to correct my writing. But as discussed in the road mapping planning for Q2 2025, there's quite a few issues in our backlog that pertain to HTTP. We should broadly examine our HTTP support across the WasmCloud ecosystem and ensure we are consistent, uh, failure resistant, and easy to use.
Can I suggest a goal for this one? It's
Goals.
like
What is this?
an overarching what good looks like at the end here
Yeah. Yeah.
is when we feel comfortable taking the HTTP provider, the built-in HTTP provider out of experimental.
Stability and structure, and can commit HTTP, the built-in HTTP providers to the SIMver strategy we apply to the rest of Wasm features. Does that sound reasonable? I really like that concrete goal. It's like, we mark things as experimental because we want to have the freedom to change them and mark them just to say like, hey, you're kind of opting into a new thing here. And we have a lot more flexibility with the external providers to change them. But in the host, we need to feel solid about it. Um, mhm. Uh, Please see the April 23 community roadmap session for more details. Okay. Thinking about this one, we also need maintainers examining the HTTP strategy fully requires looking at WasmCloud guest SDKs for Go and Rust, WasmCloud host, WASI HTTP implementation, WasmCloud host, built-in HTTP server and client, and
And probably a little detour into WASI P3 and prepare the wasmCloud code base to receive WASI P3.
yeah, yeah, I think it sounds good. Um, I think quite honestly, there's something that goes even beyond just Wasm Cloud itself here too, which is what is Wasm Cloud responsible for on HTTP load balancing routing? Like when when would you just use wasmCloud, and when would you front wasmCloud HTTP endpoints with a reverse proxy or, an ingress? How does it integrate with like Kubernetes or Envoy or, Istio or any of those things? I think that there is an opportunity for us for those of you who've been keeping an eye on what we do for HTTP for quite a long time, for listening on HTTP. I mean, making HTTP requests is the easy part, but listening for HTTP, we would reserve a specific address and port. And then now we have routing modes where you can route based on path or based on a host header, which host header, works just like you would expect in any proxy, but path, we're not supporting wildcards or like variables. And, adding a lot of that stuff is a decent maintenance burden for us as a project maintainer is just trying to be the best WASM, WebAssembly platform. We don't need to build a load, an ingress too. So I think out of this, it's we don't really we don't really have to do this. So I'll put it under alternatives, but I would love to see a broader um, documentation stance that we take as wasmCloud HTTP developers for how it should integrate with existing tools like Kubernetes, Envoy, Istio, Nginx. Does this one make sense? I don't want to expand the list of this too much, but I think if we constrain ourselves a little bit to say, you know, Wasm Cloud is responsible for getting the HTTP to the component, then it helps us with scope a little bit in terms of like routing modes we need to suggest and things like that. A big item on the last roadmap was um actually, Colin, can you refresh me a little bit on that one? It was around
No,
Envoy,
it's
like
just exactly it was exactly what you were saying. Like I
okay.
just there has and I think it ended the my own journey with it ended when I started talking to Lucas because he was like, we're doing whole new CRDs. We're gonna have kind of going in here or something like it, and it's like, oh, okay, well, it sounds like you're gonna have something like the Kubernetes API server, no matter what, and then or essentially, like in production use cases, right? We'll have a Kubernetes API server and we'll use a Kubernetes API server. And that's kind of the answer for this thing. Like that initial kind of like, how is this that's what your question was, like, how is this going to work? It's like, well, we're gonna have a Kubernetes API server and then we'll base solutions for Kubernetes based things like service meshes and Envoy and stuff like that. Um, which are built to work within the Kubernetes API. Um, that'll come from there. So yeah, that was the
Yeah,
idea.
yeah,
Yeah,
right.
and I also think the challenge here is when we're looking at load balancers, like load balancer targeting, you need a stable port for in most environments. So you go to AWS, the ELBs will expect a stable port. You you go to GKE, same story. And the fact that we can bind providers to any HTTP to any port is adds some complications to the mix here. Specifically for the Kubernetes case, what this means is very unlikely that we can use regular Kubernetes services for the load balancing because Kubernetes services need the port to be configured there. What you have to use instead is a service type external name, which or headless, which what they are doing is providing you just Kubernetes DNS pointing to pods. So then you're not doing load balancing anymore because you're doing DNS load balancing. So I think a lot that should go in here is explaining when to use which type of provider. Do you want your HTTP components to not ever share have the ability to share to have impersonation, for example, because you don't process the host header. So in that case, you want a dedicated capability provider for you. But if you are in a multi-tenant environment that has 500 different components, you don't want to assign one individual port for every one of them. Then you need to go to a single HTTP provider, but you also have to make sure that the host name is correct. So there's no like a simple answer. It depends on the use case, and I think explaining when to use each provider for each use case is what we're missing here.
Well, it sounds like we're also just missing how that would work.
Yes.
We also need to flesh out those two use cases. So we could have two. Yeah, I think it's good we can identify two scenarios. But then we have to identify what it actually looks like if you're in one scenario or another, right? Like how exactly that all gets set up. Because we can't, like there are obviously going to be trade-offs there, and it might not even. I mean, might get super complicated and not even work if you go down one route.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, really, our goal from the wasmCloud HTTP side should just be to, as efficiently as possible, get an HTTP request give the tools for you to get an HTTP request to the right component. So, if we can implement the host-based routing, basically DNS load balancing to a specific component, and that is enough for all or for you to configure your Nginx, Envoy, whatever to get to the right component. That feels like what we need to do, and not much more. It should be brain dead simple for like the local dev use case, hit 80/80. But then once you go to production, just being able to do the routing properly seems super important.
Yeah, I mean, you should be able to stand up a kind server as well locally. I mean, you don't have to.
Yeah.
But you should be able to have that and then or something like that and be like, oh, this makes sense. This is how this works. And then I can have the confidence to replicate this somewhere small, right?
Yeah,
So
definitely. Amazing. Well, now on our Q2 roadmap is more of a deep design exploration of HTTP in the research category. And there are a couple of like good first issues and development things that will spin out of that that are already filed, but sounds great. As I mentioned a little bit earlier in the call, I've been pruning through our previous issues for things to come onto this roadmap. Want to make sure that as we accomplish roadmap items, we're also knocking down issues that have been open. So there's a couple more to go through here on my end. Some of them are already captured on the Q1 roadmap. Oh, hey, good chart. Um, but we have about 20 minutes left in the regular call. We usually roll over on this one anyways, but I just wanted to open the floor at this point. Do folks have issues that are in the backlog or now, even pull requests that are open that we feel we should prioritize for the next quarter? Keeping in mind that we're doing this a little bit late. So, looking through the end of June for this one, what else should we make sure that we capture on this Q2 roadmap? And I'll just leave it open here for anybody.
um sorry, because I came late. Can you just show what we already have on there? I'm sorry.
Yeah. Yeah. And I, I know, Colin, you're going to be a good researcher and go back and watch the whole video before or after. But yeah, essentially for this current roadmap, we've moved some of the categories to like their who can take them in their scope. So, research is more big design work and things like WASI P3 tracking. Development, any maintainer should be able to take it. They're well scoped features, and then good first issues are even more smaller scope, like things that anybody should be able to take. So On here, we've pretty much, other than rolling things over from the Q1 roadmap, which I'll be able to do after this call, we can close it. We've brought in things under the triage for like a host configuration file, just having a single file for, you can pass it to the wasmCloud host and it configures everything. No need for a
Yeah.
flag
Oh,
and an
sorry, books. Don't go over everything just for my sake. But I would say there's probably looks like we need to have, other than HTTP, there needs to be at least some sort of validation of all the 0.3 features. I would say, more of like an epic. If we
Yeah,
don't already
yeah,
have that. Okay. All
we
right.
do
All right. It's
we do
already
have
in
this.
there. It's already in
Yeah, for sure.
All
Yeah,
right.
this one definitely goes in the research category, but doesn't does not, that there isn't a ton that's takeable right now, I guess, other than
Yeah.
like, you know, what
Examples.
we're working on. Yeah, yeah.
Examples.
Um,
Maybe
really
the
one.
providers.
Mhm. Yeah. Some of the most important stuff is just keeping an eye on the different interfaces, how we need to change like HTTP changes in
Yeah.
WASI P3. Um, yeah, how providers are going to change all that
All
stuff.
right. All right. So if I'm not adding anything, is that what I'm getting? Like everybody's already fully thought that through. Um,
No, I, we didn't talk about it at all in this session, so I think it's
okay.
really important. It'll roll forward from Q1, but it's incredibly important for the future of Wasm Cloud. It's feasible and possible that WASI P3 would be a it wouldn't be a breaking change for people who have existing, components and things. Like we can still support WASI P2 just fine. But rolling forward and adding support for P3, you know, there's potentially a lot there. So we have the best ability to mitigate that.
And then you have Go at some point having 0.3, and then you'd have to have WADG or your Go SDK probably updating.
Mhm.
Um, all right.
Let's see, Lucas, you said, have we documented the behavior of the bus error type? Um, this is the new one, right? Yeah.
Yes.
No, maybe. I think we started on it. Hmm.
Might want to get some. Oh, sorry. I'm gonna type it
Okay.
for once.
I thought that we did some, but I think it might still be something we need to do. So let me just go ahead and file it, and if I'm wrong, then we will just close it later. But that would be great. So for folks who didn't see the PR come across, this error interface essentially propagates a type from WRPC, but it allows you to do error handling for custom interfaces that you do for Wasm Cloud. So if something happens at the transport layer, like your NATS is disconnected or your TCP socket is not bound or something like that, we can actually return an error to you in the Wasm guest. It doesn't panic. So incredibly important for doing error handling with custom interfaces. But let me um, file that as a documentation.
Brooks,
Um,
we have started that, but it's not in a PR yet. So you've
oh,
you've seen an early version of it. That's why you're thinking, I know I've seen it somewhere. Um,
okay, amazing. Actually, Eric, while you're here, would you mind just filing an issue for that in the Wasm Cloud, like wasmcloud.com repo? Amazing. And then you should be able to add it to the Wasm Cloud roadmap project, and you can just slap that in Q2 and under development, I think is a good place for it.
Sounds good.
Awesome. Let's see. Florian, you mentioned the workload identity RFC. Yes, let me open that. Yep. So Jonas and Colin have been working on this one for a little while. This was originally proposed about midway through last quarter, so it made it onto it did not make it onto the last roadmap because it was proposed in February. See how that thing works? But it is incredibly important. I know that so Jonas has landed a couple of, or we have landed a couple features in wasmCloud today for workload identity. We've at least seen a POC of connecting to NATs with workload identity and the ability for an individual component to fetch its workload identity. And that was essentially what Colin and Jonas demoed during
Mostly Jonas.
KubeCon. Just Jonas. Sure.
Mostly
Um,
Jonas.
okay, mostly Jonas. Just take the credit. Take the credit. He's not here. You can say you did all of it. Okay. There is. I do want to move forward workload identity because I think it has a lot of potential to be an identity verification mechanism that we just don't quite have today. Like we have decentralized auth with in-keys. But there is a pretty big issue in upstream Spiffy open right now, which may affect how we implement this for components. So I'd love to move this onto the roadmap, but it is possible then what we have proposed is going to change based on the output of this issue. So this one, the support for sidecarless service meshes, specifically calls out things like Istio ambient mode and just Istio ambient mode. But this is basically the mode that we run the wasmCloud lattice in. It doesn't have to, NATS is not required to be a sidecar, and the lattice is this flattened topology network that is everywhere. So if we do it, if this affects the way that someone would deploy, would configure workload identity and deploy it in an Istio ambient mesh, then it would likely deploy the way that we would want to, do it in wasmCloud. I saw Jonas's face here. What did he say? Hey, look at that. Maybe this one was open like around the same time that we put our RFC forward. So I'm sure that we've considered some of the aspects here. I'll give it a thumbs up too. So okay, so really that is all just to say that I would love to push forward the workload identity work. I am unclear if it's going to change the way that we implement it based on the output of this issue.
Well, this is basic. Sorry, isn't this taking a Spire feature and bringing it into Spiffy? That's the
Potentially.
big idea here.
I'm actually not familiar with that
Oh,
piece, so it might be.
yeah. So it changes how if you are using Istio. I don't know. I did look at this. I've done many things since. So um so I think if you use our Istio integration story, if you were using if you were using Spiffy and Istio, actually, so you weren't just treating it like another ingress controller, but you were actually managing um, the relationships between services using Istio, then our story could change. We could not require people. It would allow us to not say, hey, you want to use this, you need to have your own Spire server. We could say like, yeah, we can use Istio too. Like we'll have workloads and Istio will know what they are, and you could manage connections between things. Especially like say Kubernetes stuff and wasmCloud stuff using Istio workload identities.
Yeah,
It
the
would be a little bit
delegate.
more configuration too, because you probably could have to configure it so that like Istio just doesn't care if wasmCloud's talking amongst itself. I don't know. This is where it's going to get a little tricky. A little tricky.
Yeah, okay.
All right.
Then in the vein of our new fun categories, I would say we just throw it under research. This is something that Um, Lucas, Colin, Jonas, when you watch this, I'm looking maybe a little bit more to you guys. Not honestly, maybe not to feel like you have to drive this across the line in the next like 2 months, but really just to set like the future of the identity of this story, because I think it's really important, and we should also probably talk about it because wasmCloud has a concept of identity now, sort of, not for a running workload, but more for like a build artifact based on like an embedded JWT. So essentially, all I'm really saying is that we've made attempts at this before and done it somewhat, but probably and for providers, yeah, and but probably have an opportunity for like deeper, just like doing a bunch of spiffy stuff. Um,
Should just work. Shouldn't even know. Shouldn't even have to know.
you should not even have to know. Yep, for sure. It should be, I think we determined it should be optional too. I mean, it's not,
Yeah.
you don't
Well,
have
just
to
like
run.
Istio.
Yeah, yeah, just like Istio, just like Kubernetes, Wasm Cloud should be able to work with it great, but you shouldn't need it. Um, okay. Oh wait, there was one more issue. Colin. WASI
Uh-oh.
WebGPU.
Oh yeah, I
Yeah.
just added that in because uh I might do a KubeCon talk about it, and therefore I mean I don't know. I feel like once we've got the WASI WebGPU thing landed, we're gonna want some examples. I don't know if that needs to go on the roadmap. It's just something I thought of. But everybody wants to run machine learning stuff, right? So,
Yeah.
you know,
Wasmify your LLM. I don't see any problems with that.
yeah.
I'm super interested too. I think what I thought was that like WebGPU is legit. It's working. Like people are like experimenting with it. I mean, we can just Google it.
Yeah,
Um,
I don't think it's land. When I last talked to Sean, it wasn't fully in the see
mhm.
um WASI WebGPU headless is not in Wasm time right now yet.
Okay.
At least
Ooh,
as of April 10th.
okay.
It's the last time I
I
checked.
I swear Bailey mentioned something about this being worked on. Bailey, are you
Oh yeah,
here?
it's getting worked
No.
on.
Okay. Uh, I'd be happy to throw this on. I just don't really know the
I don't
scope
no
of.
no don't. It's just something I thought of. I felt a lot of pressure. Really put me on the spot. So
Yeah. Well, Colin, have you contributed your 10 quarterly roadmap items that we need to work on? As is necessary by every
yeah,
Wasm Cloud maintainer? No.
that's right.
Okay. Well, we'll keep an eye on WebGPU because it definitely, I mean, it is relevant AF. And if we can have a story for like bringing that in on Wasm time, like to let you interact with the GPU, be pretty cool. So we'll keep an eye on
Yeah.
that one. There's just not really a clear scope, which is what research is for. So we could, but it's okay.
hmm
Sorry. Um, no, get out of here. I messed that one up. Well, I think we're pretty much at the end of the call today, but just to summarize, I'm happy to go over if folks have other issues that they'd like to try and bring on. But just to summarize, I think that the current roadmap is almost complete. I'd like to finish going through some of the issues that are in our Wasm Cloud backlog and get them tagged appropriately for this. Really, I think that for some of the goals of quarter two, 2025, I think we should really be looking forward at, we should be preparing Wasm Cloud for WASI P3 and, generally doing a stabilization passes on some of our most common workflows. So, people using wash dev, trying to remove the binary download of that and run things embedded in wash. taking a look at the way that we've had trouble extending Wash in the past, and having folks be able to add custom functionality. So bringing the plugin mechanism kind of the next level, which is why the pluginifying Wash is on. It was brought on this roadmap. Easier configuration, taking care like the deep design of HTTP. It seems like pretty generally this we know for wasmCloud what the happy path is, and what most people are doing for like their local development story, and then like what you hit as you try to take it to production. So taking a lot of the issues that we have on the current list and pulling them up on the roadmap, I think will be really nice just to keep us accountable and knock some of those things out so that, again, we can focus on being the coolest, most awesomest WebAssembly project that's out there, Um, I was thinking of I have a little bit of a write-up around the category changes and some of the big pieces that I think we will be taking on during this roadmap, that I'll push up a draft for feedback, hopefully a little bit later today. But um, ooh, there is actually one more thing that I'd like to propose to bring on onto the roadmap. Um, and I'll just do that real quick. But everybody think of your ideas. If you have more ideas, we can get to them too. And if you need to leave, thank you so much for coming. So the one other thing that I would love to bring on, which was not my idea, but I did put up the RFC. So take that for what you will. Um, I think that we've been rolling with the like home.wash directory for quite a while. And it's worked like fairly well. I mean, we put files in there and then we read them later. Like that's how it works. But this isn't really adherent to any existing standard or convention. And it happens there is one that covers what we want to do pretty well, which is the XTG based directory spec. And I'll be honest, I mean, maybe I'm the one who put in the create the .wash directory. I just didn't really know that this was a thing. So thanks for whoever nerd sniped me into this. But I think it would be great to respect this convention, put context and configuration in the XDG config home directory, downloads, developer logs, keys go into the data home, and then like package cache, Jetstream directory go into the cache home. And realistically, what this looks like is if you've ever like installed a tool and then in your home directory, you notice like under .config, you get a wash directory. That's what this directory spec is. Like if you go in your terminal and you ls in like .config, you'll see a bunch of stuff there probably. And I think that instead of really, it would just be nice of us to, instead of creating another like directory to like populate the user's home, let's put it in the fairly expected place. We don't have to be so rigorous about this. We could just throw everything under .config, right? But I figure while we're here, why not? This will also be important when we get to plugins. So I would love to do this one. Feels like an easy lift and something we should do. Anybody hate this? Anybody have a personal vendetta against the XTG thing? There are alternatives, but this seemed to work pretty well. Okay. All right. Lucas says thumbs up. Sidansu is laughing at me, and Mark says party time. Cool. Good enough for me. Okay. This one actually, I mean, I think this can go into the development phase, honestly, honestly, anybody would be able to take this as a good first issue. I just put it in development to consider the like the implication of moving the directories and where we're putting binaries and stuff like that. Yeah. Okay. So that was my last one. I forgot that I just wrote in my notes for later. All right. Do folks have anything else they'd like to propose to throw on the roadmap? Awesome. Thank you all for coming today to your regularly scheduled quarterly road mapping planning. I think we'll be a little bit more timely about the next one because there isn't a big conference and then everybody lagging out after that for this one. So I'll put up a little draft of the conclusion from today's roadmap. I know that there's quite a lot of issues that are going to be on this one, but they really are coming not from new work, but from existing issues that are filed. And so I think that this will be what's the Tim Apple way of saying this? This will be the most focused roadmap yet. Yeah, we think you're going to love it, and I think that's really it. But yeah, thanks everybody. Thanks for being here. Thanks for putting in your feedback and spending the time. And I think that's it. Let's get to work. Thanks everybody. Have a Wasm